Welcome to Black Family and Love Stories.
Andre Washington was 40 years old, and for 12 years he believed he was building something real. He was a structural engineer, the kind of man who showed up early, stayed late, and quietly carried everything. The mortgage, the bills, his wife Trisha's business that never quite turned a profit. He never complained, never wavered. While he was on job sites calculating load weights and stress fractures, Trisha was at home, in his bed, dismantling everything he'd built, dollar by dollar, over 19 months, $160,000, gone, and another man in his place. What Andre didn't know was that Trisha had already filed for divorce and sworn to a judge, under oath, that the affair never happened. She believed he was too steady, too proud, and too conflict-averse to ever fight back. She had no idea he'd been watching, and she had no idea what he was carrying into that courtroom. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The bridge smelled like rust and river water. Andre Washington stood on the deck of the Callaway Street crossing, 40 feet above the Millhaven River, a set of load calculations in his hand and a problem in his head that the calculations hadn't caught yet. The morning was cold and gray. Wind came off the water in steady, flat pushes. Below, the current moved dark and slow. His junior engineer, Marcus, stood beside him with the kind of confident posture that comes from being 26 and recently right about something. "Numbers are inside tolerance," Marcus said. He pointed to a circled figure on the printout. "Stress load on the eastern support column is sitting at 61%. Safety threshold is 75. We're fine." Andre didn't answer right away. He crouched down, pressed 2 fingers against the base of the column where it met the deck plate. The steel was cold. He moved his fingers 4 inches to the left, then looked at the joint from a lower angle, the kind of angle you only get when you stop standing straight and actually look. There it was. A hairline fracture, barely visible, running in a shallow curve along the weld seam. Easy to miss, easy to explain away. But Andre could see how it connected to a second microcrack 3 inches above it, and a third stress mark on the underside of the crossbeam it fed into. Individually, each one was within tolerance. Together, they were a pattern, a compounding failure, the kind that looks fine right up until the moment it doesn't. He stood up, marked the location with a grease pencil, and handed the printout back to Marcus. "Flag this column. Full inspection before anything else moves forward." Marcus frowned at the mark. "The numbers say we're—" "The numbers don't see the whole column." Andre said it without heat. "Pull the inspection team." His supervisor, Ray, had been watching from the lane barrier. He walked over as Marcus went to make the call, and he looked at the mark on the column the way people look at things they almost missed. "How do you catch something like that?" Ray asked. Andre looked out at the river for a moment. "I don't assume something is fine just because it hasn't broken yet." He got home at 6:40. The house on Delwood Court was a good house. Red brick, double garage. A front yard Trisha had landscaped 2 summers ago with money they didn't quite have but spent anyway, because the look of the thing mattered to her. Andre had mowed that yard 100 times. He knew every uneven patch of it. Inside, the lights were warm and the television was on. He could hear it from the entryway. A cooking show, or maybe one of those home design programs Trisha liked. "Hey," she called from the living room. "Hey," he called back. He set his bag down, hung his jacket, washed his hands in the kitchen sink, while a pot of something simmered on the stove. She'd started dinner, which meant she'd had a decent day. He lifted the lid, stirred it once, and put the lid back. Trisha came in to check it herself a few minutes later, reaching past him for the spoon with the easy familiarity of 2 people who have shared a kitchen for 12 years. She was put together even at home. That was just Trisha. She'd changed out of work clothes, but still wore them the way some people always look like they're going somewhere. She was attractive, and she knew it. Not in a vain way, but in the manner of someone who has simply always been aware of what the room registers when she enters it. "Client call ran long," she said, tasting from the spoon. "The Devereaux wedding people. They want custom centerpieces now. I told them custom costs, custom money. I'm hoping to close them this week." She stirred the pot again. "I think this could be a good one." "Hope so," Andre said. He meant it. He always meant it. 3 years of subsidizing a business that was almost profitable had not made him bitter about it. Not yet, or not consciously. He had told himself repeatedly that a small business took time, that the event planning market was competitive, that Tricia was talented and building something real. He had told himself these things enough times that they felt less like conclusions and more like habits. After dinner, he sat at the desk in the small study off the hallway and opened his laptop. Quarterly Portfolio Review. He did this every 3 months without fail. Tracked allocations, rebalanced where necessary, made sure the numbers were pointing where they were supposed to point. He pulled up the joint investment account. He read the balance. Then he read it again. $11,400. He did not move. He did not call out to Tricia. He did not do anything at all for almost a full minute. He simply sat and let the number exist in front of him. Then he clicked into the transaction history. The withdrawals came up in a clean, scrolling list. Dozens of them. Never large. Never dramatic. Spaced out over 19 months in careful, measured increments, each one small enough to avoid an automatic alert. All of them together adding up to something that had no innocent explanation. From the living room, Tricia laughed at something on television. Andre opened a fresh document and began to type. The house had gone quiet. Somewhere down the hall, the television had clicked off. He'd heard Tricia move through her nighttime routine. Water running, a drawer closing, the particular sound the bedroom door made when she pulled it most of the way shut, but not all the way. She always left it slightly open. 12 years, and he still didn't know why. Andre sat at the desk and kept working. The transaction history was open on one side of his screen. Their shared Google Calendar was open on the other. He moved between them the way he moved through load calculations, slowly, without rushing, giving each entry the full weight of his attention before moving to the next one. Entry by entry, month by month, 22 months of it. The transfers were elegant, in the way that deliberate things are elegant. Never more than $4,000 at a time. Usually $2,000, sometimes less. Spaced apart by 10 days, sometimes 2 weeks, occasionally a full month. As if someone had studied the account's rhythm and learned to move inside it without disturbing the surface. No 2 consecutive transfers were the same amount. The variation was intentional. Andre recognized the logic of it immediately, because it was the same logic he applied to structural load distribution. Spread the weight, and no single point shows the strain. Whoever did this understood how not to be noticed. He pulled up October of 2 years ago. A transfer of $3,200, routed out on October 11th. He looked at the calendar. October 11th. That was a Thursday. He scrolled back through his memory and found it. The Thursday she'd come home after 9, smelling like restaurant air and someone's perfume that wasn't hers, and said the client dinner had run long. He'd been reading in the study. She'd leaned in the doorway and said she was exhausted, and she'd gone to bed. And he had read for another hour and thought nothing of it. $3,200 had left their account that day. He moved to March, a transfer of $3,900 on March 4th. He checked the calendar. He had been in Columbus that week, 3 days for a site review on a highway overpass project. He'd called Tricia on the 4th in the evening from his hotel room. She'd picked up on the second ring, asked how the drive had been, told him she missed him, said she was in for the night with a glass of wine and a book. Her voice had been warm and unhurried. He stared at the March 4th entry for a long time. He kept going. February, the following year. A transfer of $2,700 on a Tuesday. The same Tuesday she had texted him at work that she was thinking about him, sent him a specific kind of message that had surprised him because it wasn't like her. Not anymore. He'd thought it was nice. He remembered thinking it was a good sign. He had read it at his desk and smiled at his phone and gone back to work. $2,700 gone the same day. He sat back in his chair. The room was dark except for the screen's glow. Outside, the neighborhood was fully asleep. A dog barked somewhere far off and then stopped. Andre looked at the spreadsheet he had built over the last 3 hours. 41 rows, each one a date, an amount, a destination account number that appeared in every single transfer and matched nothing in their household records. One account, the same one, every time. An account he had never seen, never opened, never been told existed. The pattern wasn't accidental. He knew that the way he knew structural failure, not because someone told him, but because he had looked at enough broken things to recognize the design beneath the damage. This was not carelessness. Careless people make uneven mistakes. They vary the account, they rush, they slip. This was patient. This was planned. This was someone who had decided something and then spent almost 2 years executing that decision in careful, measured silence. He closed the laptop. He went to the kitchen and filled a glass of water from the tap and stood at the counter and drank half of it. The kitchen was clean. She kept a clean kitchen. There were flowers on the table. She'd bought them herself at the farmer's market on Saturday. Yellow ones, arranged in a low glass vase. He looked at them for a moment. He set the glass down. One decision formed, quiet and complete, the way his best decisions always did. Not from emotion, but from clarity. He would not move. Not yet. Not until he could see the whole structure. Not until he understood every load-bearing point in what she had built. He would not confront her. He would not tip his hand. He would not make a single move from a position of incomplete information. He had never done that on a job site. He would not do it now. He turned off the kitchen light and walked down the hall. The bedroom door was still cracked open. He pushed it gently and stepped inside and undressed in the dark. He pulled back the covers carefully so as not to wake her and lay down on his side of the bed. Trisha's breathing was slow and even. Andre lay on his back, hands at his sides, eyes open. The ceiling was pale and featureless in the dark. He stared at it until 3 in the morning. He woke at 6:15. The alarm hadn't gone off yet. His body simply decided it was done with sleep, the way it always did when he was carrying something heavy. He lay still for a moment, listening to Trisha breathe beside him. Then he got up. Breakfast was eggs and toast. He made enough for both of them, the way he always did on weekday mornings when they were both home. Trisha came into the kitchen in a light gray blazer, her hair pulled back, her face already composed for the day ahead. She had a client meeting at 9, a corporate anniversary dinner for a logistics company downtown. She had mentioned it twice this week. "These are good," she said, meaning the eggs. "I used the good butter," Andre said. She smiled at her phone and scrolled through something, and Andre refilled his coffee and looked out the window at the backyard. The grass needed cutting. He'd been meaning to get to it. He thought about that for a while, just to be thinking about something else. She was out the door by 8:20. He stood at the window and watched her car back out of the driveway and turn south toward the boulevard. And then he watched the street be still for another few seconds, and then he picked up his phone and called Kendall. His brother answered on the second ring. "You're calling me before 9, Kendall said. "What happened?" It wasn't a question. Andre sat down at the kitchen table, in front of the yellow flowers in the low glass vase. He laid it out. All of it. From the beginning. the quarterly review, the balance, the transaction history. He walked Kendall through the timeline. 22 months, 41 transfers, one unrecognized account number, the amounts calibrated to stay below any alert threshold, the dates cross-referenced with the calendar. He said it all evenly and without editorializing, just the data, just the structure of it. Kendall didn't make a sound the whole time. When Andre finished, there was a pause. Then, "Andre, this isn't carelessness." Kendall's voice was flat and certain. "Somebody who does this, the spacing, the amounts, same account every time, they thought it out. This is a plan." Andre was quiet. "You touch anything?" Kendall asked. "No." "Good. Don't. You move $1. You give her something to point at." Kendall paused. "You need an attorney before anything else. Not tomorrow. This week." "I know," Andre said. "I mean it, Andre. Before you confront her, before you ask her a single question." "I know," he said again. "I'm going to." He meant it. He would call that week. But there was something he needed to do first, and he didn't mention it to Kendall because he wasn't sure it would amount to anything. It might be nothing. He genuinely wasn't sure. He thanked his brother and sat with the quiet kitchen for a while after he hung up. Then he opened his laptop and navigated to a cloud storage account. 6 months ago he had bought a small secondary camera. Nothing elaborate. A simple wide-angle unit. No bigger than a deck of cards, the kind designed to sit on a bookshelf and blend into the objects around it. He had mounted it one afternoon before a 4-day trip to Knoxville, angled toward the center of the room, motion-activated, set to upload automatically to a private cloud folder. He remembered doing it. He also remembered that he had come home from Knoxville and found nothing alarming, and filed the whole thing away in the back of his mind and never gone back to check the footage. The folder had been collecting files for 6 months. He opened the first file flagged by a work trip date from his timeline. The Columbus trip in March. The same week Tricia had told him she was in for the night with a glass of wine and a book. The clip was timestamped, 11:47 p.m., a Tuesday, 3 days into that trip. A man walked into the marital bedroom. Andre did not move. He watched. The man was in his late 30s, well-built, unhurried in the way people are unhurried in spaces they have come to feel comfortable in. He moved toward the far side of the bed, Andre's side of the bed, and sat down and said something off-camera. And Tricia's voice answered him from the direction of the bathroom, and the man laughed softly. Andre stopped the clip. He opened the next flagged date. The same man. He opened another. The same man. He went through every date his financial timeline had marked, every weekend trip, every overnight site review, every conference he had attended and called home from and been told everything was fine. 14 dates, 14 clips, the same man, 14 times, inside the room where Andre slept every night of his life. He paused the final clip on a frame where the man's face was fully visible. He looked at it for a long time. He had seen that face before. In a photo on Tricia's business Instagram, tagged at an industry event a year and a half ago. A name he recognized from her professional circle. Someone she had mentioned exactly once, casually, the way you mention someone you want to seem unimportant. Damon Fees. Andre closed the laptop. He got up from the desk. He walked through the kitchen and through the back door and out into the yard. The grass was still damp from the night before. He stood on the patio with his hands at his sides and looked at nothing in particular. The neighborhood was quiet around him. He stayed there for a long time. The next morning, Andre called Walter Price at 7:58 a.m., 2 minutes before the office opened. The receptionist put him on hold for 40 seconds. Then Walter came on the line, his voice unhurried, professional. "Mr. Washington, what can I do for you?" "I need an appointment today," Andre said. "This afternoon, if you have it." A brief pause, the sound of pages turning. 2 o'clock, Walter said. "Can you give me a broad category so I know what to pull?" "Divorce, financial fraud, and video evidence of an ongoing extramarital affair. Another pause, shorter this time. 2 o'clock, Walter said again. Don't be late. Walter Price's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown, clean and spare in the way of offices belonging to men who had nothing to prove. No framed press clippings on the walls, no trophy cases, just bookshelves, a long oak desk, and 2 windows that looked out over the city. Walter himself was 61, compact, with gray at his temples and reading glasses he wore low on his nose. He had the unhurried quality of someone who had seen enough courtrooms to be genuinely difficult to surprise. Andre sat across from him and set the folder on the desk. 41 pages, printed and tabbed, transaction logs organized by date, transfer amounts in one column and account routing numbers in another, a calendar overlay showing the precise alignment between each major withdrawal and Andre's documented travel schedule. He had spent the previous evening assembling it the same way he assembled a structural analysis report. Source data first, pattern identification second, conclusions supported entirely by what the data showed, nothing else. Walter put on his reading glasses and opened to the first page. He did not speak for 11 minutes. Andre sat quietly and let him read. When Walter reached the last page, he closed the folder and set it down and folded his hands on top of it. How long did this take you to build? A few hours, Andre said. Once I knew what I was looking at, the structure was straightforward. Walter looked at him over the glasses. The pattern is deliberate. Amounts calibrated to avoid alert thresholds, consistent routing to a single external account, no clustering around any one calendar period. Whoever did this understood the mechanics of joint account monitoring. He tapped the folder. This is not a spouse who dipped into shared savings out of desperation. This is systematic. In family court, we call it fraudulent dissipation of marital assets. It is recoverable. All of it? That's what we're going to establish. Walter made a note. You mentioned video evidence. Andre told him about the camera, the bookshelf placement, the cloud archive, the 14 timestamps. He described what the footage showed without embellishment, the same way he had described the financial data, plainly, with precision, letting the facts carry the weight. Walter listened without expression. When Andre finished, Walter set his pen down. You have this footage stored where? Private cloud account, password protected. I am the only one with access. Keep it that way. Do not share it. Do not show it to anyone. Do not discuss its existence with your wife or anyone connected to her. Walter leaned forward slightly. The footage is significant, but its value depends entirely on how and when it's introduced. Used correctly, it becomes something she cannot explain away. Used carelessly, it becomes a distraction. I understand, Andre said. Make no financial moves. Don't touch the joint account. Don't open new accounts. Don't transfer anything. Any financial action you take right now can be characterized as reactive, and I don't want anything in this record that looks reactive. Walter paused. And you say nothing to your wife. Not a word about any of this. She doesn't know I know. Good. Let's keep it that way. Walter sat back. Right now, the advantage is yours. The documentation is solid, the footage is direct, and she has no reason to believe you've looked at any of it. He studied Andre for a moment. Let her make the next move. When she does, we'll be ready for it. Andre nodded. He drove home in the early evening, through traffic that moved slow and amber in the low autumn light. Tricia texted him at 5:47 to ask if he wanted her to pick up dinner. He texted back, I'll handle it. She sent a small heart emoji. He set the phone face down on the passenger seat. 3 days later, a process server appeared in the lobby of his firm just after 2 in the afternoon. Andre came down, signed for the envelope, and took it to his truck in the parking structure before he opened it. He read through it once, then again. She had filed 11 days ago. The petition cited irreconcilable differences and requested equitable division of marital assets. The joint account was listed at a current balance of $11,400. There was no acknowledgement of the balance that preceded it. Attached to the petition was a sworn financial affidavit, signed by Tricia, dated, notarized. She listed the total marital estate as $11,400 in liquid assets, one vehicle, and household furnishing. Her event planning business was described as operating at a net loss for 3 consecutive years. He turned to the last section of the affidavit. A standard question, printed in plain font. Did either party engage in an extramarital relationship during the marriage? Tricia had checked the box marked, "Number Andre sat in his truck," and read that line 3 times. Andre drove directly from the parking structure to Walter's office. He did not go home first. He did not call anyone. He merged onto the highway and let the city move past him in the gray afternoon light, and kept both hands on the wheel the entire way. Walter's receptionist showed him in without making him wait. Andre set the petition on the desk. Walter picked it up, put on his reading glasses, and read it the same way he read everything, completely, without rushing, without performing his reaction for the room. Andre sat across from him and was quiet. Walter worked through the financial affidavit first. He paused once near the asset listing and made a small mark in the margin with his pen. Then he turned to the final section. He read the perjury question, read Tricia's checked answer. He set the document down on the desk in front of him, took his glasses off, set them beside it. "She swore to this," Walter said. It was not a question. "Yes," Andre said. "Signed and notarized." "Yes." Walter was quiet for a moment. He looked at the affidavit the way Andre had looked at structural drawings before delivering news that nobody wanted to hear, with the particular steadiness of someone who already understands the full weight of what is on the page. "She has just handed us everything we need," Walter said. She did not have to attach this affidavit. She volunteered it. She signed it under oath, submitted it to the court, and declared that no extramarital relationship occurred during this marriage. He tapped the document once with 2 fingers. "You have 14 time-stamped video recordings inside the marital home that prove otherwise. She did not give us an opening, Andre. She gave us the case." Andre looked at the affidavit on the desk. At Tricia's signature at the bottom, her full name, neat and deliberate, the letters formed the way they always were when she was being careful about how something appeared. "What happens now?" Andre asked. "Her attorney has already scheduled an emergency temporary hearing. 4 days from today. Property arrangements, preliminary asset division, standard early procedure." Walter picked up his pen. "I'm going to contact opposing counsel this afternoon and inform them you will be appearing. They will expect a routine hearing. We are going to let them expect that." He looked up. "We have 4 days. We are going to use every hour of them." They used all 4 days. Walter's paralegal pulled the complete case file, while Andre drove back to his apartment, the short-term rental he had quietly moved into 2 days after reading the account balance. A clean 1-bedroom with neutral walls and furniture he had chosen for function, and nothing else. He had told Tricia he needed space to process. She had accepted that gracefully, in the tone of a woman who was relieved by a development she had not expected to arrive so easily. He had not corrected her understanding of the situation. Walter's office became Andre's second workplace for 4 days. They worked through the footage together with care. Walter watching, Andre narrating timestamps, the 2 of them identifying the segment that was clearest, most direct, and most irrefutable. Not the most dramatic moment, the most documented one. A continuous 43-second segment, the bookshelf angle steady and unobstructed, the timestamp in the upper right corner of the frame precise to the second. The date matched a work trip documented in Andre's company calendar, his hotel receipts, his building access logs in another city. He had not been home. The footage showed who had been. Walter built the presentation around a single fulcrum. The sworn affidavit was the document that mattered most. Not because of what it claimed, because of what Andre could prove it concealed. "We don't need to make an argument," Walter told him on the third afternoon, reviewing the exhibit sequence one final time. "The affidavit makes the argument for us. She told the court one thing. The footage shows another. That contradiction is not a piece of evidence. It is perjury committed directly against the court. We present it plainly, and we let Judge Holt draw her own conclusions. She has 22 years on the family court bench. She will not need our help." Andre asked whether opposing counsel had given any indication they suspected something was coming. "None," Walter said. Their last communication was about parking validation near the courthouse. Andre almost smiled at that. The night before the hearing, Andre came back to the apartment at 9:15. He ate something simple standing at the kitchen counter, looking out the window at the street below. Delivery trucks. A couple walking a dog. The ordinary motion of a city that had no idea what was happening inside any particular room. He laid out his clothes on the chair by the door. Dark gray suit. White shirt. The tie he wore to his firm's annual review. Conservative. Quiet. The choice of a man who was not there to be noticed. He picked up the flash drive from the desk and turned it over in his hand once. A small black rectangle, no bigger than his thumb. He confirmed the label he had written on it in permanent marker, Exhibit A, and set it back on the desk beside his keys. He washed his face, set his alarm for 6. He got into bed, closed his eyes, and was asleep by 10:15. The courthouse smelled the same way it always did. Recycled air, floor wax, and the particular stillness of a building where serious things happened every day, and the walls had stopped being surprised by any of it. Andre walked through the security checkpoint at 8:47. Walter was already there, standing near the elevator with his briefcase and his coffee, looking like a man who had done this 1,000 times and found it neither exciting nor stressful. Just work. "You eat this morning?" Walter asked. "Yes." "Good." Walter pressed the elevator button. "Let's go." They entered courtroom 4 at 9:03. Tricia was already there. She was seated at the left-hand table with her attorney. A man named Graves, silver-haired and practiced, the kind of attorney who wore confidence the way other men wore cologne. She had dressed carefully. A charcoal blazer, hair pulled back. The composed, understated look of a woman who wanted to project reason, stability, credibility. She had thought about this outfit. Andre could see that she had. She did not look at him when he came in. He did not need her to. He sat down beside Walter, set the flash drive on the table next to his legal pad, and folded his hands in front of him. The courtroom was small and clean, fluorescent light. A single monitor mounted on a wheeled stand to the left of the judge's bench. A court reporter at her station. A bailiff near the door. Ordinary room. Ordinary morning. Nothing about the space announced what was about to happen inside it. Judge Caroline Holt entered at 9:12. She was a compact woman in her late 50s, with close-cropped silver hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She moved without ceremony. She sat. She opened her folder. She looked around the room once, quickly, the practiced scan of someone taking inventory, and began. "We're here on a petition for dissolution of marriage filed by the petitioner. This is a preliminary hearing for temporary orders." She looked at Graves. "Petitioner's counsel, you may proceed." Graves stood with the ease of a man in familiar territory. He was good. Andre could see that immediately. Graves spoke in clean, unhurried sentences. Irreconcilable differences. A marriage that had run its course. 2 adults seeking a fair and orderly separation. He described the shared assets as modest. He used the word reasonable 3 times in 4 minutes. He referenced the financial affidavit Tricia had submitted and called it thorough. He used the word transparent and did not blink when he said it. Tricia sat with her hands folded and her eyes forward, and her expression carefully arranged into something that looked like quiet dignity. Andre watched the table in front of him. He did not look at her. He did not need to look at her. Walter wrote 2 words on his legal pad and turned it slightly toward Andre. Almost there. Judge Holt turned to Walter. "Respondent's counsel." Walter stood. "Your Honor, before any filings are entered into record, the respondent requests permission to submit one exhibit for the court's review. It bears directly on the accuracy of documentation already before this court." Judge Holt looked at him over her reading glasses. "What kind of exhibit?" "Video footage, Your Honor. Approximately 40 seconds. Retrieved from inside the marital home." "A beat." "Proceed," Judge Holt said. Andre picked up the remote. His hand was steady. He pressed play. The footage came up on the monitor. Bookshelf angle. The familiar room rendered in crisp digital clarity. The nightstand, the lamp, the window with the curtain half drawn. The timestamp in the upper right corner of the frame, white numbers against the dark border, precise to the second. A date that matched exactly a work trip Andre had taken 7 months ago. A trip documented in his company calendar, his hotel receipts, and his building access log in a city 200 miles from this one. He had not been home. The footage showed who had been. Damon Fees, Tricia, the marital bed. Both of them visible from the shoulders up, covered by blankets, turned toward each other. Talking, laughing at something, completely at ease, completely unaware of the small black camera sitting on the 3rd shelf between a framed photo and a clay pot Tricia had brought back from a weekend trip 2 years ago and called one of her favorite things. The room was silent. Graves had stopped writing. His pen was resting against his legal pad, not moving, and he was looking at the monitor with the careful stillness of a man rapidly reconstructing everything his client had told him before they walked through that door. Tricia did not turn her head. She stared at the table in front of her. Her hands, still folded, had gone very tight. Walter let it run for 40 seconds. Then he stopped it. He turned to face Judge Holt directly. "Your Honor, the petitioner submitted a sworn financial affidavit to this court 11 days ago. In that affidavit, signed under penalty of perjury and notarized, she declared that no extramarital relationship occurred during this marriage." Walter's voice was level. "No drama. No performance. This court has just watched footage recorded inside the marital home that directly and explicitly contradicts that sworn statement. That affidavit is not a misstatement. It is perjury committed against this court." The room stayed silent. Judge Holt did not look at the monitor. She looked at Tricia. It was a long look. Steady and unhurried, the look of a woman who had spent 22 years on this bench, watching people make catastrophic decisions, and had stopped being angry about it long ago. What remained in that look now was something colder than anger. She picked up her phone. "Get the police in here." She set it down. She turned to Graves. "Counsel, I advise you to say nothing further to your client until the officers arrive." Graves closed his folder. He did not speak. The bailiff moved to the side door. Andre sat at the table with his hands flat on the surface in front of him, and his eyes forward, and he did not turn around. He could hear movement behind him. Voices, low and official. The particular sound of a situation becoming formal and irreversible. He did not turn around to watch her go. The call came at 8:14 the next morning. Andre was in the kitchen with his coffee, still in yesterday's clothes. He had not slept much. Not because he was broken up about it. He had processed the worst of it weeks ago, alone in a backyard in the dark. It was something else. The particular stillness that follows a thing you have been building toward for a long time. Like finishing a job and standing in the quiet after the last bolt is turned. The number on his screen read, "City Police, Financial Crimes Division." He answered on the second ring. "Mr. Washington." This is Detective Reyes. I've been assigned to the matter involving your wife. A pause. Former wife. I apologize. It's fine, Andre said. I'd like to sit down with you and review whatever background documentation you might have available. Help us build out the picture on our end. When do you want me there? Another pause. Shorter this time, like the detective hadn't expected the answer to come that fast or that clean. This morning works, if you're available. Give me an hour, Andre said. Detective Reyes was a compact man in his mid-40s, with tired eyes and a desk that looked like it had been losing a war against paperwork for several years. He stood when Andre came in, shook his hand, and gestured to the chair across from him. Andre set the binder on the desk. It was 41 pages, tabbed and labeled. Transaction logs organized by date. Transfer amounts cross-referenced against account routing numbers. A calendar correlation sheet mapping each major withdrawal to a corresponding date from the shared household schedule. Everything sourced, everything documented. Color-coded tabs along the right edge, blue for joint account activity, red for unrecognized routing destinations, yellow for calendar cross-references. Reyes paged through it slowly, not skimming, reading. He turned pages carefully, the way someone moves through something when they're genuinely trying to understand it, rather than just confirm what they already think. He got about halfway through and stopped, looked up. Mr. Washington. He set the binder down. You didn't need us to find any of this. No, Andre said. So why bring it to us? Andre looked at him evenly. I needed it to be official. Reyes held his gaze for a moment. Then he nodded, slowly, once. Like that answer had settled something for him. He picked up the binder again and kept reading. The forensic subpoena hit Tricia's financial records 4 days later. Walter called Andre on a Thursday afternoon, and his voice had the particular quality of a man who had seen a lot of divorce cases and was still mildly impressed by what he was holding. There's a second account, Walter said. Her name only. Opened 3 years ago. Andre was quiet. 6 weeks after your 9th anniversary. Walter continued. Andre remembered that anniversary. He had planned it himself. A long weekend at a place on the coast that Tricia had mentioned wanting to visit. Back in year 3 of the marriage. He had made the reservation 4 months in advance, driven them both up on a Friday afternoon, paid for everything. She had called it the best trip they had ever taken. She had cried a little on the drive home and said she didn't say it enough, but she loved him. 6 weeks after that, she had opened an account he never knew existed. Walter kept going. The account had been receiving 2 kinds of deposits. The first, systematic transfers routed out of the joint account through a secondary pass-through. Smaller and less regular than the primary drain Andre had already mapped, but consistent. The second source was more significant. The event planning business had been profitable for at least 2 years. Not struggling, not almost breaking even. Consistently profitable with margins Tricia had been quietly redirecting into the private account while continuing to report losses on the household books, the losses that Andre had covered without question, every quarter, because he believed her, and because that was what you did. The business he had funded because it was losing money had been making money the entire time. Walter saved the largest item for last. There's one outgoing transfer from the private account, he said. $47,000, 8 months ago. Recorded in her business ledger as a consulting retainer paid to Damon fees. Andre said nothing. It wasn't a retainer, Walter said. It was a down payment. There's a condo registered in her name, 30 minutes across the city. The transaction timeline lines up exactly. She was building somewhere to land. Andre sat with that for a moment. The whole picture was complete now. Every piece of it visible and documented and official. She had not just been leaving, she had been constructing the place she was leaving to, brick by brick, transfer by transfer, using the money from the life he had built. And she had been doing it for years, while he sat across the dinner table from her and believed what she told him. He thanked Walter and hung up. Then he called Kendall. He delivered it the same way he had delivered everything else, methodically, in order, without editorializing. The second account, the profitable business, the false losses, the $47,000, the condo. Kendall listened to all of it without speaking. When Andre finished, the line was quiet for a moment. Then Kendall said, "She didn't just cheat on you, she built a whole exit and used your money to pay for it." Andre was quiet for a moment. "She won't be keeping it," he said. Sonia Briggs picked a coffee shop on the east side of town. Neutral ground, her idea. Andre had let her choose. He arrived first, took a table near the window and ordered a black coffee. When Sonia walked in 8 minutes later, she was already doing the thing people do when they are carrying something heavy and trying not to show it. Smiling a little too quickly, moving a little too carefully, like someone navigating a room full of things that could break. She sat down across from him and set her purse on the empty chair beside her. "Andre," she nodded. "Thanks for being flexible." "Of course," he said. She ordered a latte from the server without looking at the menu. Her hands stayed on the table. She glanced at his phone, then at his face, then down at the surface between them. Andre reached over and turned his phone face down. "Sonia." He kept his voice level and easy. "I'm not here to put you in anything. I just need a timeline." Something shifted in her face. Not relief, exactly. More like the expression of a person who has been holding a door shut for a long time and finally feels someone else take the weight. She lasted less than 5 minutes. It came out in the particular way of things that have been compressed too long. Not all at once, but fast once it started. Sonia confirmed that Tricia had begun planning the divorce exit 2.5 years ago. Not floating the idea. Not having hard conversations. Planning. She had known about Damon fees for nearly 2 years. She had been present in at least 3 separate conversations where Tricia discussed what she called the settlement. The word she used the way someone uses a word when they have already decided on the outcome and are just managing the timeline. Andre drank his coffee. He did not react. He let her talk. Then Sonia said the part that landed differently than everything else. "She used to say—" Sonia stopped, looked down at her latte. "She used to say you wouldn't fight it, that you'd rather absorb the hit than make a mess of things publicly." Andre was still. "Those were her words?" he asked. Sonia nodded. "Pretty close." She said, "Andre doesn't fight. He adjusts. He'll take the loss before he takes the mess." The coffee shop hummed around them. A child laughed somewhere behind Andre. A door opened, and the sound of the street came in briefly, and then was gone. Andre set his cup down. Tricia had not just stolen from him. She had built the entire architecture of the theft on a blueprint of him. His nature, his patience, his instinct to endure quietly rather than combust publicly. She had taken the best things about who he was and turned them into load-bearing walls for a plan designed to hollow him out. She had bet her whole exit on the assumption that the man she had been underestimating for years would keep on letting her. Sonia was looking at him carefully now. Her voice dropped. "I should have said something. A long time ago. I know that." Andre looked at her for a moment. Not warmly, not coldly, just clearly. "Did she ask you to stay quiet?" he said. Sonia hesitated. She didn't have to ask. He nodded once. That was enough. "I can put something in writing," Sonia said. "If it helps, whatever you need for the process." She gestured vaguely at the space between them, meaning lawyers, courts, proceedings, all of it. Andre reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and placed a folded document on the table. 2 pages, clean margins, Walter Price's office information printed at the top. He slid it across with a pen. Sonia looked at it. Then she picked up the pen and signed. She left first. Andre sat with the signed document and the last of his coffee, and watched the street through the window for a moment. People moving past in both directions, everyone with somewhere to be. He folded the document carefully, put it back in his jacket, and walked to his car. Beverly Washington arrived that Sunday with a casserole dish wrapped in a kitchen towel and a look on her face that Andre had known since childhood. The particular expression his mother wore when she had made up her mind to say something difficult and had decided that today was the day. She didn't start with it. She talked about the neighborhood, his cousin Marcus's new job, a program at the church she thought was worth attending. She served the food, and they ate at his kitchen table the way they had always eaten, unhurried, the television off, the kind of quiet between them that never needed to be filled. Eventually, she set her fork down. She folded her hands on the table and looked at her son. "I want to tell you something," Beverly said. "Something I should have said a long time ago." She had noticed things early. Year 2, maybe year 3 of the marriage. Small things. An invitation not passed along. A family gathering where Tricia positioned herself between Andre and the people he was closest to, steering conversations, redirecting attention, managing the room the way she managed events, with a practiced eye toward who was getting too comfortable with whom. Beverly had watched it happen slowly, the way you watch a tide go out, not dramatic enough in any single moment to name directly, but visible across the length of it. She had stayed quiet. Andre's marriage, Andre's life to navigate. "I thought I was respecting your choices," she said. Her voice was steady, but the steadiness cost her something. "But I think I didn't want to cause you pain. And instead, I just let it go on longer than it should have." Andre looked at his mother across the table, the woman who had raised him and Kendall alone, who had worked every year of his childhood so that both of her sons could have options she hadn't, who had never once asked him to be anything other than exactly what he was. He reached across and put his hand over hers. "You told me what you could," he said. "When you could. That's all anyone can do." Beverly looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were wet, but she did not look away. She stayed 3 hours. They finished the casserole. They talked about other things, good things, ordinary things, the kind of conversation that doesn't require anything from either person except to simply be present. When she hugged him goodbye at the door, she held on a beat longer than usual. He stood in the doorway and watched her car until the taillights disappeared around the corner. Then he went inside, sat down on the back porch in the cool evening air, and looked out at the yard. The full picture was assembled now. Every layer of it, the money, the footage, the second account and the condo, and the $47,000. Sonia's signed statement and Tricia's own words, passed along word for word by the only person she had trusted to stay quiet. His mother's voice across a kitchen table, accounting honestly for what she had seen and what she had held back. It was all there. Every piece of it sourced, documented, witnessed, and on record. He sat with it for a while. The yard was dark. Somewhere down the block, a neighbor's dog barked twice, and then stopped. Andre took out his phone and called Walter. "Accelerate everything," he said. The courtroom was the same room, same pale walls, same long windows throwing the same thin morning light across the same rows of wooden benches. The bailiff standing near the same side door. The same elevated bench where Judge Caroline Holt would enter and take her seat and look down at whatever was placed before her. Everything the same, and nothing close to it. 90 days had passed since the officers walked Tricia out through that side door. 90 days in which the world she had built, piece by careful piece, year by quiet year, had been taken apart with the same methodical patience she had counted on never seeing from him. Andre arrived early. He and Walter claimed their table, arranged their documents, and sat without speaking. They had done their work. Everything that needed to be said had already been said. In depositions, in submitted exhibits, in a 41-page financial reconstruction that now existed as part of the official court record of this case. There was nothing left to prepare, only to be present while it concluded. Tricia entered 7 minutes before the session opened. Andre did not turn around when the door opened. He heard it, heard the particular rhythm of her walk, the sound he had known for 12 years, and he kept his eyes on the documents in front of him. But he registered it, all of it. She was represented by a solo practitioner, a man in a gray suit who carried his briefcase with the careful energy of someone who had been handed a difficult situation and was managing his expectations accordingly. Her original firm had withdrawn 6 weeks into the criminal proceedings, citing a conflict of interest in a letter that said nothing and communicated everything. Walter had mentioned it without editorializing. Andre had nodded and moved on. He did not look at her until he had to. The meeting with Damon Fees had happened 3 weeks before the reconvened hearing, arranged through a mutual acquaintance who relayed that Damon wanted to talk privately before things developed further. He had framed it as wanting to clear the air. Andre agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near his office. Damon arrived dressed well, carrying himself with the residual confidence of a man who had not yet fully understood his position. He sat down. He opened with something measured and reasonable, the tone of a man who believed that a calm conversation could still redirect what was already in motion. Andre let him finish. Then he placed a folder on the table. Inside, the forensic subpoena results showing the $47,000 transfer recorded as a consulting retainer. The title documents showing Damon's name attached to the condo transaction as a co-facilitating party. A third document from Walter's office, 2 pages, outlining the full range of Damon's civil and criminal exposure as a knowing participant in fraudulent asset dissipation. The calm left Damon's face 1 layer at a time. Andre closed the folder and slid it across. "Your attorney should see all of that," Andre said, "before you say anything else to anyone." He stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked out. He did not look back. Damon's cooperation agreement with the district attorney was signed 11 days later. His full statement confirmed Tricia's direction throughout the scheme: the private account, the concealed business revenue, the condo, the fraudulent retainer classification. Every piece of it. He confirmed that she had designed it, that she had led it, and that she had given him every reason to believe the divorce would be finalized before any of it surfaced. He had believed her. That, in the end, was his own problem to carry. The hearing was quiet. That was the only word for it. Walter presented the complete financial reconstruction from the beginning. Every transfer out of the joint investment account, every month of concealed business revenue, the private account, opened 6 weeks after their 9th anniversary, the $47,000 and where it went. The condo, 30 minutes across the city, purchased with Andre's money to house a life built on the assumption that Andre would never look closely enough to find it. Tricia's attorney offered limited responses. There was not much to offer. The documentation was airtight. Damon's cooperation statement had closed every remaining gap. The opposing table had no counter-documentation because Tricia, meticulous about managing people's perceptions and catastrophically careless about financial records, had left a paper trail that told the full story without requiring anyone to interpret it. Judge Holt awarded Andre full civil recovery of the drained investment account, complete title to the marital home, a settlement figure that reflected 12 years of documented financial contribution and 12 years of documented deception. Separate criminal proceedings on perjury and fraud would continue on their own calendar. The civil judgment would attach to Tricia's credit and her business for years. The gavel came down. It was over. They rose to leave. Andre was stacking his documents into a neat pile when he felt it. The particular weight of being watched. He turned. Tricia was looking at him. For the first time since the original hearing, she was looking directly at him. Her eyes moved across his face, the way you search a room for something you left behind. urgent, uncertain, hoping to find something still there that you could hold on to. Andre met her gaze. 2 seconds, maybe less. There was nothing in his face she could use. No anger, no grief, no opening of any kind. He looked away. He picked up his documents, straightened them once against the table, and walked out beside Walter into the corridor. The bridge was 340 feet long. Andre knew that number, the way he knew all his numbers. Not recited, not looked up, just present, embedded. The span ran east to west over a narrow river corridor, cable supported at both ends, designed for foot traffic and the kind of daily weight that accumulates invisibly over time. It was his first commission as lead at this scale, and he had earned it the way he earned everything, incrementally, without announcement, by being exactly as good as he said he was. He was walking the span now with 4 junior engineers behind him, pointing at the cable anchors while he talked. Load distribution isn't just about the weight you can see, he said. It's about the weight that builds without anyone noticing. 1,000 small forces, all of them adding up. He stopped and turned to face them. You account for those, or you don't account for anything. The youngest of the 4, a woman named Priya, who asked more questions than the other 3 combined, was writing something in her field notebook. Andre waited until her pen stopped moving. Then he kept walking. 10 months after the divorce was finalized, he had received a call from the managing partner of a regional infrastructure consulting firm, a firm 3 times the size of his previous employer, with commissions that matched. The man had heard Andre's name through legal circles. A family court attorney had referenced Andre's financial documentation methodology during a continuing legal education seminar on asset fraud proceedings, specifically the precision and sourcing of the reconstruction, the way it had been built to withstand adversarial scrutiny. The managing partner had looked Andre up. Then he had called. Andre had listened to the full offer before responding. He accepted on a Tuesday, started the following month, led his first regional team before the year was out. He had told Kendall about it on the back porch, the evening after he signed. Kendall had nodded slowly. She thought she was taking your foundation out from under you. Andre had looked out at the yard. She didn't know what I was standing on. He kept the house. That had never been a question. The house was his, built into the mortgage from the first signature, maintained by his income for 12 years, and awarded to him in full by Judge Holt's ruling. He stayed because he wanted to, and because leaving would have meant letting the memory of what happened there determine what the place was allowed to become. He repainted the living room first, the color he had always wanted, a deep, warm slate gray that Tricia had called too dark and too heavy every time he brought it up. He rolled it on himself over a long weekend, listened to music the whole time, and stood back when it was done, and decided she had been wrong about that, as it turned out, along with other things. The back porch renovation took 3 weeks and came out exactly the way he had sketched it years ago when it was still just an idea he kept deferring. Wide planks, proper lighting, a ceiling fan that actually worked. Beverly sat out there on the first Sunday it was finished and told him it was the best room in the house. He agreed. Beverly came every Sunday now. She brought food and stayed long enough that staying felt natural, unhurried, like something that had always been the plan. Kendall and his family came often enough that his youngest, 7 years old and entirely certain about his preferences, had claimed the left cushion of the living room couch as his permanent seat, and would inform anyone who sat there that they were in the wrong spot. Andre let him have it. Kevin Ossie had been at the housewarming when the porch was done, had given a toast that was mostly jokes and entirely sincere, the way Kevin did everything. He had raised his glass and said something about cameras and timing that made the room laugh, and Andre had laughed with them, the kind of laugh that means something has been fully processed and can now be spoken about out loud. He kept the good ones close now. He was done maintaining careful distance from people who deserved to be near him. Trisha had accepted a plea agreement on one count of perjury, probation, mandatory restitution, a civil judgment attached to her credit and her business that would follow her for years in ways that were quiet and unrelenting and impossible to charm her way out of. The professional reputation she had spent years building in event planning circles absorbed the story the way still water absorbs a stone, completely and permanently. She relocated to another city 8 months after the proceedings concluded. Damon Fees had lost his professional standing in the cooperation's wake and lost Trisha 6 months after that. The relationship had been built on a shared scheme. When the scheme was gone, so was everything else. Mr. Washington. Priya had her notebook open again. How do you learn to see what isn't obvious? Like, how do you train yourself to catch the thing everyone else misses? Andre was quiet for a moment. He looked out at the span, at the cables, the deck, the river moving slowly below. You stop assuming that because something looks stable, it is, he said. And you stop being afraid of what you find when you look closer. He turned back to the plans and kept walking. He had spent 12 years building something for someone who was quietly taking it apart. He was done building for people who didn't understand what they had. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.